Without further ado. So anyway, I'm the coordinator of international programs, and I've been with IPO on and off since the 1990s. First as, a teacher, and then coming back, when we were starting study abroad, I was in on that. That was part of my duties. And then kind of the coordinator of international student services when we used to be bigger. And then I came back and right in time for COVID. But I'm so happy to be here. So I just kind of coordinate activities. I'm also the PDSO, so the immigration compliance piece of this, which can sometimes be a little complicated, but we try to help students through the process. And
yes, Rebecca helps students a lot in that respect. And they do internships after they finish your LCSC. That's, all things that she's coordinating. So it's a lot. Yeah, my name is Emily Jerves. I started in September, like I mentioned, and I do a mix of different things in the office supporting, but but really just working with retention, helping our students, especially our exchange students that are new here, academic coordinating and all of that as well. And then study away is newer to our office as well. So we'll probably touch on that as well, ways you can get involved.
She's been working on building out the curriculum for Bridge from what we had before. And so it's in place. So then when we get students, then we'll be able to do it. We're getting a lot of interest for more of a a la carte experience. People coming for a short term who might want to take a few classes, but not a full program. So we're trying to figure out how we're going to accommodate that. And then Janelle Kelly, who also is a Miss Multitasker because she's admin assistant for international programs, Native American, minority, and veteran services, which and also includes the Piampinois. So that whole group. So we're all under one roof. So
yeah, a lot of things in one office.
And then, like she said, we do international recruitment and retention activities. And so right now my mind's on recruitment and how can we creatively recruit the types of students that are going to be a really good fit for this school and give them a really good experience. And that's what we're focused on. And then international student services, which includes that immigration piece. But we also do things like tax workshops and employment workshops and other issues that are particular to our students where it might be different than a domestic student. And also, being far away from home and in a new place, we help them with that too, and communicate regularly with them about opportunities for engagement on campus. We also do SD 111, which is International Club, and 192, which is International Student Seminar, which that SD 192 is new for fall, and we encourage all new international students to take it. It is a little bit like SD 107, but also about engaging on campus and in the community, and sharing their culture, kind of being an ambassador. Our J1 exchange visitors, those are our groups from Tunisia, Russia, and Pakistan. And we're hoping to expand that to some other countries. The Tunisia program in particular, they have another program that usually goes to community colleges because they're STEM majors, but this would be a good fit for them as well because we can offer additional English support, which they will need. So for this coming year, we're doing our applications for our students from these countries, but we're now including Bridge so that they can have, it'd be like half ESL support courses and college readiness, and then half taking a couple classes, maybe in American Studies or their major or writing. So we submitted the applications and then we'll just wait and see who we get. Yeah. Also university exchanges. We have some sister schools from the past, like Toyo University in Japan and Musashino. We also had some in Taiwan and South Korea that we will be rekindling, hopefully. And those are students that come on semester year exchanges. Got our bridge pathway we talked about, and then host and friendship families. Most of our students are in the dorms now. We don't use the host families as much, and over time, and especially during COVID, we lost quite a few. So we're looking for that, but Emily's had some good luck with friendship families, connecting students with people in the community for like dinner and activities without having to have that somebody's living at your house all the time. And then international outreach and engagement. Like I said, we're going to go up to Orofino, and then we have somebody who's going to be contributing to Art Under the Elms, and we had people volunteering at the bike rodeo this past fall, so that's good. And then Study Away. So I'll take it away on Study Away, because there's some new stuff.
Yeah. So going off of that, obviously we work with students, incoming international students, but also hoping to offer opportunities for our students here on campus to go abroad or study away. So we have the traditional study away programs that you've probably heard about. It's kind of all-inclusive programs, but we also work with National Student Exchange, which is an opportunity to study at another university in the US, Canada, Guam, the US Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico. And so they simply pay LC state tuition, just like normal. They have financial aid, all of that goes with them. And they just pay room and board fees like that, flights or whatever they need for transportation. So we'll probably talk a little bit more about that later on, but that's another way to kind of get students that might be in your classes involved, get them excited to maybe not necessarily go to another country, but they could even go to a different state, a big city, an island. Those experiences still like really broaden their horizons and their experiences. So that's something that I'm hoping to get up and going a bit more. And I actually did it myself, so I'm really passionate about it. And I think it's a great affordable opportunity for our students. And it's kind of more tangible for those that maybe are like, whoa, that sounds way out of my comfort zone, going to another country. And so, yeah, I think it's really, really great opportunity. So we're working on all those different things.
Really happy to pass along flyers, right?
Yes, I'm hoping for this fall to either have just a handout, even something digitally you could put on Canvas, if that's helpful, or emails. And then I mentioned in a faculty senate that I joined, if people want me to come in and do a short presentation, I'm willing, but I know there's not always time for that. So if that's too much, I can always just have a flyer, because
you can definitely have my class.
Yes.
I always want my students to know. I feel like it's nicer coming from you than from me.
To have a new face.
Yeah.
And I although there's not as many SD 107 classes in the spring, I did talk to a couple of classes this spring, and then hopefully this fall as there are more sections, because it's really great, especially if you have a class with freshmen, sophomore, not that juniors and seniors can't, they definitely can participate, but it's helpful for me to sit down and be like, okay, how can this fit in with your coursework to meet, the credits that you need and all of that. So I always say the sooner the better is always helpful.
That's what I was going to ask. So sometimes the credits can transfer them.
Oh, definitely. Yes. Especially with National Student Exchange. I mean, they might be going to, the University of Arizona, or a lot of students want to go to Hawaii. So University of Hawaii at Manoa, that's the really popular one. So those courses really do, for the most part, transfer. We do a lot of work of, okay, let's get your list of course offerings organized ahead of time, so that we make sure they count for what they need them to, especially for financial aid. But for National Student Exchange especially, it's pretty easy to find those courses. Abroad can be a bit trickier, but it's definitely doable, especially if they have gen eds. That's easier to find abroad.
And I think the abroad, what we had trouble with, and I worked up at WSU, and this is the big thing we had trouble with, is the school would list their courses that were available, but those were not the courses that were available the semester that the student arrived, and so things didn't transfer back. A lot of those schools, though, are now like us and have gone to online registration, and it's getting a bit easier. But it is kind of sometimes you know, need to talk to your advisor. It is a negotiating process. So the sooner you start, and the better.
Yeah, especially if they have like really specific class, you know, they're in their junior year and they're like, I need all my education courses that are very specific, and you know, that's where it gets a bit trickier, but it's definitely doable. So yeah, we're trying to push that as well with COVID. It just, there are so many unknowns with visas. Sometimes we're still advertising it, but I think National Student Exchange is also a bit easier as far as mobility goes.
Right.
Yeah, and affordable too, which is really great for
Affordable is
students.
important.
Yes, yeah, it's really, really good. So a little bit of what we wanted to touch on today is just really ways to internationalize your curriculum. Kind of what does that mean? Why is it important? And then just kind of some tangible things. I know our campus, I'm sure you're already doing a lot of these things anyway, but I think it's just kind of a good reminder to have in the back of our minds as we're kind of planning even for the next academic year, or maybe things you haven't thought about. So we'll have some time to discuss at the end what you're doing, and we'd love to hear your feedback. And
I know like individual instructors or departments, they can have the things that they're doing, but it's not always all connected, you know, and so you might not know that somebody else in another department has been promoting something similar or having a similar discussion. And so just kind of making a place or time where that can happen.
Yeah, kind of start the conversation. So yeah, really just to begin, when we talk about internationalizing curriculum, it's really just to kind of give a global perspective for students, you know, to see things from different lenses, different perspectives, and also to really build intercultural competence, like Rebecca had mentioned earlier. A lot of our students probably haven't had as many experiences, or maybe haven't even thought to look at it a different way. So sometimes it doesn't have to be this grandiose thing that you're totally changing your curriculum, throwing it out the window. That's not what we're really vouching for here, but just to include little things here and there, it really makes a difference for students.
Yeah, I had an interesting conversation with a student the other day. He took a social science class fall semester, and it was something that was kind of new for him, but part of the work involved looking at other cultures through a different lens. And he said, I don't think the class realized that most of the way that they were looking at things is through an American lens. And even though they were looking at the world, it was still through an American lens. And I thought, this is really an interesting thing that you bring up. You know, maybe this could be a cool conversation to have with somebody about how, you know, American academics or the textbook or the readings. He pointed out something that I would not have even thought of, you know, because it looked on the surface, from how he described it, I didn't see the actual thing he read, that, you know, they're talking about other cultures and being very inclusive and trying to see a diverse perspective. But to him, it was just like very American. You know?
And it's
like,
hard. I mean,
I want to know more about this.
Yeah, it is harder it's harder to actually do than to say it, you know. I think, you know, because everyone has their own cultural perspective, and
personal.
To switch that, it's difficult, and it really does take a lot of reflection and planning, and so that's
linguistic too, right? You know, the way we use language to describe something is different. You know, some things don't translate and some words make a different way of thinking about things. So
in the way our students perceive what we're teaching also can be perceived very, very differently. So yeah, it can be complex, but we'll try to make it a little bit more tangible.
It's fun to think about.
Did you have suggestions for?
Yeah, I'll get to that in just a moment.
When you're student too, though, like, did the student say anything about?
We didn't really have, I told them that this is a conversation we need to continue, because he was there about something else, but yeah, I think, you know, he also was trying to articulate it. And you know, I think after he has some time to think about it, And he's coming back in the fall, and we'll hopefully be working for our department. So this
Nice.
conversation to be
realize that.
continued. I just think it's an interesting thing. It's like, did you talk to your professor about it? And we hadn't, but he was going to.
Mhm. That is an interesting perspective. So this just kind of talks a little bit about why it's important. I mean, this list could go on and on. I didn't include everything in here, but really, like I mentioned, preparing our students to go out to a global workforce, working with people of different backgrounds, different cultures. That's a big piece of it. And really just creating an environment that celebrates all of our students and really is welcoming for them, inviting, which I think we really do great here, especially because we're smaller. We can be a bit more personable with students. So we see that already. A lot of our students come in and that's what they love about
Yeah, that
LCC.
same student that was talking about the cultural thing also said that he's continuing here rather than going home to finish his degree, because the way that people teach here is so much better, that he's so much more engaged. His grades are better. He's excited about his major, and he's getting a lot more experience that he thinks he can use in a future job. So, he likes that.
Yeah.
So, there's good things.
Yeah, it's encouraging to see. I think we're already doing a great job
Yeah.
here, but just a reminder. And then another kind of great piece about internationalizing curriculum is really to increase collaboration among students and increasing their communication as well with other people. And we'll talk about kind of ways to do that next. And increasing cultural understanding, which I think is even more important now than maybe before, even within our own country, just broadening that perspective is just so important. And I mean, more locally here on our campus, it really helps to meet our diversity vision statement as a campus too. I know we have made steps to incorporating general education courses that incorporate diversity and things of that nature, but even just incorporating into other courses that aren't quote unquote, to meet that diversity credit, we can embed it into other areas as well. More locally here on our campus. And I kind of like this visual, hopefully you can see it. But when you get more into like the literature of all of this, there's a woman named Betty Lesk, I think is how you pronounce it. She's from Australia, and she has written a lot about internationalizing curriculum. And so I kind of like this visual. I feel like it kind of breaks it down into a little bit more tangible way. But really, like we were kind of going off and talking about, was really the first step is just reviewing and reflecting. So kind of thinking about, okay, how do I see my curriculum? How am I looking at it, and how could I look at it in a different way? Or how might my students perceive it? Kind of stepping back. I think that's a really great first step, because it's easy to overlook that and try to jump in and do a bunch of things. But I think that piece is really key, and I thought that was really helpful. And then she just goes on to imagine, think about ways you could change things, alter, kind of get creative. Revising that plan, maybe collaborating with other faculty members could be helpful, maybe getting their feedback and kind of changing things. Trying it out, just like, we do in the classroom. You're always changing things, trying it out, see how it goes with students. Evaluate how it goes. You could even have an assessment to see kind of how students thought of the activity, project, whatever it might be. And then, kind of going through the process again. But I think it's kind of helpful just to see it in a more tangible way, rather than the overarching idea that can be overwhelming.
And it just keeps going.
Yes, yeah, never ending.
Yeah,
Definitely.
never ending.
And Betty Lesk has a few different books that she's come out with. One is called Internationalizing the Curriculum. And so that's something you could always look into as well. And these are just kind of bullet point ideas of ways you could incorporate these things into your curriculum. So like I said already, with the reflection piece, that could be something you could do over the summer as you're kind of piecing things together. And this also could be a really easy one to probably integrate, is just creating global learning outcomes. Maybe looking at your outcomes you currently have, you can even adjust them slightly to kind of include more of a global perspective for students. And of course, including those in your syllabus. Another thing is integrating exchanges, study abroad, faculty-led travel intercurriculum. I know I met with Carenza that has been doing this. Obviously, that's a bigger task of doing something like that. It doesn't have to be quite that big. But, you know, I think that's a really great way for students to have that exposure. And I think it's really helpful what she does, because they study the location, the culture, all of that before they go. So it's just a really powerful experience, I think. And she kind of touched on the idea that it's a really helpful experience for students that have not had any international travel experience, because it really, she helps guide them and prepare them for that experience. But that is obviously a lot of planning, and it's really difficult and doesn't always work well with everybody's curriculum. So another really great idea is this idea that's considered COIL, or Collaborative International, got it cut off here, online learning. And this can really take place in many different aspects, but it's really having, you know, your classroom and then collaborating with maybe another classroom abroad. And it could be the whole course, but often it's a collaborative research project, could be just like a unit they do together. It's often a few weeks to maybe a couple months. This is kind of a great way to take what we've learned through COVID and kind of apply it to our classrooms. So it's often done virtually, could just be through Zoom. Typically the faculty members are collaborating up front, kind of planning what they'd like to do. And what's really cool about it is it could be in the same discipline, or it could be completely different. So I'll give the example. My husband actually did his undergrad in Ecuador, and his professor in Ecuador collaborated with a professor at the University of Maryland. And they took these two courses that were actually different disciplines. One was a little bit more engineering, and one was like IT, I believe. And they had classes. I don't think it was quite every week. I think they did kind of disperse it among this semester, but it was just a couple times a month that they would meet. And then they paired up the students to do a collaborative project, a research project. So they paired up them into groups, and they met over Zoom. And it was just a really cool way to have the students work on their cultural communication skills and working with others and that speak different languages, different cultures, and all of that, but also to meet the goals of your class and not have to travel. So I provided a link here, and we can always send it out later as well. But Florida International University has a really great website that kind of breaks it down, talks about it, includes resources, and yeah, they're really great. SUNY too in Buffalo, New York has a lot as well. But if you're looking to learn more, that's a really great place to go.
As we kind of reconnect with some of our sister schools and others, then there will also be opportunities. I know one of them does like a summer institute, which is new, which is an exchange, and it's free. We were able to do that last year, and we don't have that many students on campus during the summer, but as soon as we learn more, maybe we can get it together. Because again, these are some students could even do from home. You know, if everybody has a Zoom link, we can all connect with each other.
Yeah, we thought about maybe next year even having some sort of virtual exchange piece. It could be like language partners where they like, you know, maybe 30 minutes of practicing English with a student abroad, and then vice versa, they're practicing their Spanish or whatever. Things like that that can be incorporated into classes, maybe on a more casual level too, that doesn't require as much planning and preparation.
Yeah.
For sure.
So for the COIL,
Yeah.
do you like join, like how do you get paired up with a faculty member?
So I've seen a lot of the example I gave, that professor, I think it was like a previous advisor that he had worked with. So it's kind of like a professional relationship he already had, and they kind of created it. But I did see the University of New York, Buffalo, SUNY, they have a whole resource. I think they kind of developed the concept, and they do actually have a community that you can join. And I think they will like pair you up, and it seems really great. It does have a cost to it. So I was hoping that it would be like a free resource.
Right.
Unfortunately, it doesn't look like it's free, and they have a lot of workshops too.
Okay.
But maybe if there was department funding or something that was that they'd want to take on, I think it'd be doable. But I think they help to be that resource to pair people up.
Kind of facilitate.
Yeah, or maybe even some of our faculty members that previously lived in other countries or are from other countries, maybe that could be a good resource to pair up as well.
Mhm.
Or we could try to help facilitate in some of that too.
Yeah.
Um,
And there's maybe, we could collaborate between the CTL and your
Mhm.
office to
Right.
put together a cohort of people who wanted
That would
to
be super cool.
try that.
Yeah, or we could just try it with one course to kind of see how it
Right.
goes, and then yeah,
Mhm.
it could be kind of cool.
Yeah.
It can be a great experience for students
Generally, it's
too.
a kind of a community thing. At the elementary level, I
Okay.
gave my students some resources. They have like virtual pen pals and things like that, where you
Uh-huh.
like go into that and they can pair you up with other teachers and things.
Okay.
Oh,
The
yeah.
same country or not.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I'm like, oh.
Hmm.
I'm very intrigued. right
You're
now.
doing
well.
I know.
Sure.
I was
Yeah.
telling them about it, but I thought, oh, I'm wondering if there'd be free resources at the college level
Uh-huh.
somewhere too.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot out there. Like I said, there's so many ways you can do it too. And I think it's probably even easier to implement now with COVID, because even abroad, a lot of places are like so used to using Zoom that maybe they weren't previously.
Right.
So to start that probably is even easier now than
Mhm.
a couple of years ago, which is encouraging.
For sure.
And even kind of not quite the opposite of Quail, but even connecting with groups in our community as well. Having our students go out, and it could be a project, or having those community members come into the classroom is also, I think, really beneficial too.
I'm always really surprised by all the international people who do live in our community. I had one visit this past week, and he's from Kenya and has been all over the place. And I didn't even realize he lived here and had a business, or reading scholarship essays. The students who are coming in, who they might be permanent residents or citizens, so they're not on my radar, but
Right.
they grew up in another country.
Mhm.
So it's really, they're around. It's just sometimes they're not on your radar.
Mhm.
Right.
Connecting with them.
Until they come and see you.
Yeah, that's true. We kind of talked about this one already, but creating a safe space for students to feel comfortable sharing their perspectives, like the example you gave, maybe not necessarily questioning the curriculum, but kind of like, oh, I hadn't thought of it that way, or kind of giving them that space. Another resource that I stumbled upon kind of looking around and researching was this resource called World 101. I think it's fairly new. Really great resource, and I really like the way that they've set up the website. It's really user-friendly and kind of easy for students to access. But that could be a really easy way to just incorporate, global issues or current events, kind of things like that. They have kind of different modules within that site that you could use as a writing activity, maybe a warm up. It doesn't have to necessarily be like your whole unit, but they do have quite a bit on there. And that's a free resource too. So I thought I would mention that World 101. That could be really easy to use in class. And then just like I mentioned, on the teaching perspective of reflecting, also give students a chance to reflect as well. They probably haven't thought about how their own culture affects their decision making, their action, what they do, allowing them to kind of think about that. I think it's
In terms
powerful.
of like communication too, when I was teaching ESL, one of the most fun units was when we were talking about verbal and nonverbal communication differences between different cultures. And so we did talk about cultures within the US, like ages, different cultural groups, but also internationally in terms of proximity, for example, like how far away do you stand from somebody when you communicate with them? And what is okay and what is uncomfortable? Or hand movements, or, you know, your tone of speech, how you speak to people who are younger or elder than you. And it was always fun, and we had a lot of good laughs. But one that most people were surprised about was the proximity one, because we have some cultures that get too close for our comfort, and that can be seen as aggressive. And the person who believes it's too short may start to back up, right? And the person who thinks it's too far will start to close the space, and you know, and we have had some differences in communication even here on campus, and misperception just because of somebody doing something normal for their culture felt abnormal to somebody here. So, and eye contact in the classroom is another one between different cultures within the United States. You know, as far as, you know, look somebody in the eye when you talk to them, right? But for some cultures, that's very disrespectful.
Or greetings as well as one that
Greetings.
we've realized, or when I lived abroad as well, some cultures, what you might do is seen as disrespectful or vice versa. So navigating that, I think having your students work on ways to communicate and talk about those things can help them going forward. So maybe they don't do something that would make someone else feel uncomfortable, or
It helps them to kind of look at themselves from outside, right? And see, oh yeah, that's what I do. This is why we do this. And oh, well, maybe I should change that if I'm with somebody else.
Yeah, definitely. Another thing I had was to utilize assessments that incorporate group work so that they're able to do that. And I'm sure you do a lot of that already. But I think that's a really powerful way to have them practice those communication skills with others, with the people that have different ideas and different perspectives, backgrounds, things of that nature. And another thing you could consider is inviting guest speakers to come into your classroom. And that could even be on Zoom as well. Not that we utilize it so much, it could be easy to sort of invite someone into your classroom that's abroad, or it could just be someone in the community as well, that has a different perspective, or someone on campus as well. We have
one of our international students, if you're interested in a certain perspective, they do like to go out and speak to people about it.
A lot of the exchange students is kind of a part of their requirement, so that they have to give a cultural presentation or share their culture with other people on campus. So not that they already have to, but you can take advantage of it.
Well, it's kind of interesting too, for like cross disciplines, because you know, we have students who are in all majors and who have worked or done other things abroad, and could bring that to a class where you wouldn't normally think of it, you know. So, you know, women in STEM in Pakistan, you know, she can bring that. Or, you know, working in social media and marketing in Russia, we've got somebody who can bring that. You know, whether it's business or, you know, humanities or math, good math majors, any discipline. They could bring not only their cultural perspective, but also the way they learn about the discipline and use it in work or school.
I suppose the benefit of that is, I'm sure students appreciate like a peer-to-peer kind of, you know, presentation.
Cooler.
Yeah,
Right.
which might work in your favor as well.
Yeah.
I'm sure when they hear like, oh, you know, it's a student versus, I don't know, someone who's older.
Yeah,
They probably
or the same
appreciate.
teacher that they see all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure that's well received among students. See for that. But yeah, I wanted to also leave some time and space to just kind of share any resources or ideas, things that maybe you're implementing, or you'd like to do, something that came up. Because obviously we don't have all of the resources or ideas. I'm sure there's a lot that you do on your own. So we'd love to hear if you have any.
Open it up.
Yeah, or anyone on Zoom as well. You're welcome to write it in the chat or share it out loud as well.
Yeah.
Well, my one course that I inherited a couple of years ago was social studies methods for student teachers. And social studies was not necessarily my favorite subject in school because it wasn't taught very, it was read the chapter and answer questions for the most part.
Yeah.
I had a couple of good experiences. So that's the class I keep like making connections to. So I'm always looking to improve all classes, but that one especially is always on my mind. Like, what else do they need? You don't really have like a 3 credit, social studies methods type thing they do. So they get me for 6 days for 3 hours a day. Like, what can I fit into
Wow,
that?
that's intense.
But we go over the standards and they're actually broken up into 5 areas and one is global perspective. So I'm already thinking like, oh, we should have one of the international students come speak that day and
Yeah.
put something together. But yeah, so that was a good idea. I was thinking, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, definitely. We can help facilitate, that.
Well, and maybe since social studies wasn't your favorite subject, being able to bring up a new, generation of teachers who do it differently
Mhm.
and can offer more of a interesting and better perspective to future students.
Mhm.
For sure.
And multiple perspectives are all throughout the standards too. So I try to
Mhm.
connect that because I get asked a lot of times about it, like current events and things and how much can
It's
I say
tricky.
or what can I say? And so that's kind of my whole course is kind of aligned along that we could talk about Mount Rushmore and the Native American perspective in kindergarten. There is a way to say that, and so
Yeah, and that's like so
So
timely too, because of everything that's going on, especially in this state, about how do we teach in a way that, gives equal weight to all of the different perspectives. On the other hand, dealing with a group of people who say, I don't want my kid to feel bad, or that's not level appropriate, right? So, yeah. And other countries have the same issue for different reasons. I do remember Saudi students, I asked them once if you could include anything about American curriculum that maybe you didn't have in your country, what would it be? And one student said, scientific perspective, because in his schooling, it was more religious based. And as a young person, he didn't get the science background that he needed to be very successful in college. And he wished that he would have had more than that. So I thought that was really interesting.
Oh, that is interesting. Experiences.
And sharing resources. So if somebody wants to share like resources in one of these things, is it something that the CTO would have?
Yeah, actually, I think the best way to share resources is our Canvas site, which has not been
Oh, that's
rolled out like globally yet. It's being constructed, but that's kind of the, long-term goal is that it's a repository of resources. And I think even having a module on internationalizing the curriculum would be
Okay.
amazing, that, people could contribute things they've done in their classes. And these slides
Yeah.
into there.
Well, and, I think too, and when Holly, my predecessor,
Yeah.
was here, she didn't get to fully launch. She wanted to do more on culturally relevant or advising. And I know that most of our faculty are advisors too.
Right.
And so how to be culturally aware, sensitive, or as an educational thing to students, because culture is not necessarily something outside, it's in here too, and we all come from different cultures depending on socioeconomic, racial, our location, education level, so many different factors. So I think that's also would be a good one.
Yeah, I went to a conference I mentioned earlier, the National Student Exchange, that kind of study abroad like experience for students, and they have their own committee. It's diversity, equity, and inclusion, and they actually had a conversation about that, about more in the study abroad, study away space, but could go for any type of advising. And they made a really good point that rather than simply focusing on, study abroad is a great way to go on an adventure or, put yourself out there, they kind of made it a point that that's not always what a student's looking for. They might be looking for, an experience where they feel safe, that there's more people like them on campus, or, they feel like they're in an environment that supports their passions or whatever it might be. It might be a little bit deeper than just, oh, adventure, that sounds so fun. And it was something I hadn't thought about, working newly in study abroad, study away. So I think those kind of conversations are really useful because I wouldn't have thought of that. And now I'm rethinking what I'm doing and advising students or the way I'm talking to students. So yeah, I think having some sort of resource would be helpful, and that people can access on their own time. I'm sure they might not be thinking about it right now as the semester is wrapping up and it's just so hectic, but maybe in the summer as they're like, oh, I'm looking back at how I want to do things next semester, I think would be helpful.
Well,
I just can say it's not something you can ever master really, because it's a moving target and each student is different. And, you make some assumptions about a culture or group, but then they have generational and other changes. And so, it's a moving target a little bit. And so like people's assumptions about study abroad or study away, this is why they do it. It changes, this generation is different. And the same thing with students coming here. Their focus is different. They're a lot more focused on social justice issues, for example, than other previous generations. So.
Well, and I was just, when you were saying like that changed the way you were thinking about study abroad, the session is changing the way I'm thinking about my work because my area of specialty is US lit, and like I teach the American lit, and even those I try to, treat it more as North American literature, but as much work as I do with trying to be culturally responsive and bringing in different, like how have other cultures seen what becomes the United States and vice versa, it's still like, I'm sure your student who came in to see what's it like, we're still looking at everything, through this very American US focused lens, because that is the subject matter, right? To a certain degree, that's always going to be the case, but I'm just thinking about like, what kind of learning outcomes would I write about, understanding global citizenry, within the context of studying US literatures, right? And I think it's really exciting to kind of open that avenue of inquiry. So I'm not quite sure what that learning outcome is going to look like yet, but trying to practice exercises that take that focus away, at least, temporarily from the lenses that are so ingrained into the content and curriculum.
I had kind of a wacky professor in my master's program up at U of I who had us looking at literature through the lens of a Russian philosopher that I had never heard of, named Bakhtin. And it was just so different.
Yeah.
It's like, and I was like, why are we doing this? But that's what he wanted to do. It's like, let's look at this in a totally different way.
Yeah.
And it did end up being interesting. At first it was very uncomfortable and weird.
Yeah.
But it overall it was good,
Well, and I think literary theory is one place where like we actually are doing that in the field. So that's a great example of, but I don't know that I'm talking about it. That, I use Bakhtin sometimes, but do I talk about that as, internationalizing the curricula? Like it didn't really even occur to me till right now. So
and how much do you have time for with meeting your other objectives that you want to meet too, like for doing something like this? How can you fit a little bit of it in?
Or taking what you're already doing and then just altering it slightly or adding a different instructional strategy, or, maybe it's an activity or it's still a group project, but alter things here and there. So it's easier to implement.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll increase as time goes on as well.
And different groups of students, as you mentioned before, will take things differently.
Right.
Some might be able to run with it. Others might be a little perplexed.
As they always are.
Yeah, that's
They're
what
always
we're
a few,
for.
right?
Right.
It's all about learning.
Shake it up.
That's why we're
Shake
here.
it up.
Yeah.
Definitely. Are there any specific resources that you found helpful? I know you had mentioned a few that you were using in some of your
Yeah,
classes.
they're more for like, and from a teaching, like
Yeah.
elementary type perspective, though, with that, the pen pal thing, some students found interesting. They call it, one of them was called Mystery Skype, which you can do over, Google Meets now or Zoom, but you partner up classrooms and they have to guess where the other one's from.
Oh,
Oh,
I
So
didn't
you
know
don't know, the two teachers do, but the students have to come up with good questions to ask and
That's
then
fun.
map skills
Yeah.
and things and try to figure out where the mystery class is coming from.
Mhm.
How do you get that set up? How do you-
It's a website.
Oh,
Yeah.
and it'll just automatically pair you with.
I don't know if it's automatic, but we just had to I just had to review some resources for social
Oh,
studies methods,
cool.
and that's one of the ones that they can click on and kind of explore, but yeah, they have a whole website for doing that.
We do that activity in the college class.
Yeah.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
Because the
really-
mystery part too also makes it exciting, right?
Right,
It's like,
Right.
it's not just that, oh, here's, a pen pal, but kind of like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
that could be kind of a fun activity. You could probably use it for a lot of different things too.
Good.
Right.
For sure.
Reflective thing. I'm sure they'd find it interesting too, like the other class trying to figure out where they are,
Mhm.
They might not even know where Idaho
They'll never
is.
guess those.
Yeah, right.
Well, and that's the funny thing about some of our exchange students, when they tried to communicate to friends and family about where they were going, because they were placed here. And so how do
Yeah.
people discover of this place that they might not even know exists? And then the people overseas were having a hard time, placing it geographically. And then just some funny things that they said, like, yeah, I had my family on Skype or something, and or FaceTime, and I was walking to the pharmacy to get my COVID shot, and they could see behind and around me, and they're like, oh wow, that's pretty, but where are all the people? It's like, no, it's usually like this. It's like, so weird.
Yeah, a lot are coming from big cities, so
Right.
it's like to not have that really urban
And
experience.
that's kind of a funny assumption a lot of American students make too. From certain countries, they have a picture because they've seen it through the media or
Right.
whatever. So when they picture someplace like South Africa, what do they see in their minds versus where the student actually lives, or
Right.
Tunisia,
Mhm.
what do they picture in their minds versus, he lives in a very cosmopolitan, extremely dense city.
Yeah.
And so sometimes when we think about other places, when people think about Idaho, I don't know what they think. I've gotten weird things like, oh, clean living, or oh, potatoes, but they don't know.
That was my perspective because I'm from the Midwest,
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah.
I thought it was flat. I'm from the Midwest, and so everything's flat.
Right.
There aren't mountains, and I don't know why. I just assumed they have potatoes, probably a lot of farm fields, and flat. And I was wrong. There's so many mountains.
Right, now you go up and down a giant hill every day.
Yeah,
Into a
like
different
you-
climate zone.
Yeah, I told my parents that. I'm like, yeah, like, because I live in Pullman, like, it's 10 degrees difference from where
Right.
when I leave in the morning, and they can't believe that too. 'Cause,
And you said, oh my gosh, the leaves are all,
yeah, I mean, it looks so different
Unfurled.
already from
Yeah.
what is in Pullman right now. So,
Right.
even those perspectives for international students and our students here at LC State are
My family has had some foreign exchange to high school level, and I always enjoy asking them, saying, how did you land here? But a lot of them mention
Yeah.
the low crime rates.
Mm.
A lot of them come from bigger cities, and
Mhm.
their families want them somewhere kind of smaller, quieter.
I
Yeah.
think we get that, we've had inquiries about that, like the safety factor. I think that's sometimes a question, or they're interested. And I think we've used it as a marketing tool in the past.
We have, yeah.
As well.
And so, yeah, if you look at crime statistics, there is still a fair amount of property crime here, but in terms of general safety, it's pretty good. I always had fun talking to students. I said, but you do need to be careful because sometimes we have cougars in town. Because like there was this past summer, there were 2 cougar sightings in my neighborhood,
Oh,
you know. And you know, so there's the moose and
Uh-huh.
yeah, just things like that. That are kind of weird and charming in a way, not probably actually dangerous. But yeah, you know, it's what can we do to kind of prepare students for this place?
Right.
You know, it's like, yes, it's safe, but you still need to be cautious. You know, you still need to be aware of your surroundings and, you know, to not do foolish things. Which is what you do for study abroad too.
Right.
yes.
So thanks you guys for coming. I feel like, oh, there's so much more we could talk about, and I look forward to that canvas.
Yeah,
You know,
I think I'll be in touch with you.
yeah, and like going around seeing what other people put on there and
Mhm.
having some stuff that we can contribute.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think, you know, we are a bastion of learning here and,
Mhm.
and you know, trying to help students go out into the world.
Right.
And-
Well, and I mean, I didn't actually realize like that I could have your students come in
Mhm.
to my class or you, Emily, to talk
Yeah.
about the programs.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's something like maybe I can help you to get the
That would be
word
great. Yeah,
out
get the word out.
about-
You know,
yeah.
and like we were talking about, sometimes it takes several tries to make something stick.
Right.
And you know, to rebuild momentum, because there's been a lot of changes.
Right.
And so you know, just rebuilding that momentum of collaboration and getting students out and
Yeah.
doing activities, sharing food. That's what I was
I was
so
gonna say, when's the
I
dinner coming
know.
it's
back?
so important.
Yeah.
So Multicultural Awareness Month, still month of September, we are gonna have a food event.
Good.
Yes, but I'm hoping, I mean, my whole idea was like, when I first started, it's like having something like the was it Learning Resource Center over in Sam Glen. She used to always have like a crock pot and something
Oh,
going on
uh-huh.
Fridays.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, if we could have a rice maker and a curry, you know, just going, you know, have people come in and chat.
I think the International Club this semester is trying to do, they're in the works of planning it all, but it should be the, not finals week, but the week before that. They're planning to do some sort of like food sale, international food sale. So there'll be more updates on that.
Yes.
But it was hard to plan in the beginning of this semester because it was just kind of hard to know if that was going to be allowed, if we could do
Right.
that, but it's looking like it's a little more promising. So we should get that up in the works pretty
Yeah, oh my
soon.
gosh,
So
I can't wait.
yeah, it should be like an outdoor, just kind of like stop by at lunchtime and, you know, buy some.
Like
some
a food
nice
truck, but
foods.
with like sands instead of that, right?
Yeah, we'll hopefully
Events like
get-
that.
I think they want to do a couple of different types of food. So there'll be more updates soon.
When we had way back when we had a lot of Japanese students, we had a teriyaki sale. That was so good. It was actually pretty easy too. It's a great fundraiser, but
Yeah, we'll see what the students come up with. They've
I
got lots of
know.
ideas.
yeah.
Oh, I'm so excited for it.
I know, finally, we're getting closer to normalcy.
Yeah, yeah, we're excited for fall. There's like lots of plans
Yeah.
in the works.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Definitely.
See how much we can realistically do.
That's the hard part.
Yeah.
And we got a new group of students, so we'll
Right.
see what they want to do.
Yeah.
But at least now we have some capacity and we can do more than we did before.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Ladies.
Yeah.
Yay.
We've got everything in here. I'll stop the share.
Speaking of food, I'm gonna go grab some lunch.
Yeah. Do I end it here as
I
well?
think,
Or does it
I think it's done. Or
It's
maybe
done.
it's not.
push?
Oh,
I can try to
you
end
can
it
say
here.
end for everyone.
See.